All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining me today. My name is Michael Johnson, or MJ, as a lot of my friends and colleagues call me. And I'm excited to be here to talk on this webinar about elevating your dynamic price discovery with Redwood's rating API. And just as a quick introduction to everyone joining, my career in supply chain started in 2007 at Strive Logistics, where I had the opportunity to work across every function of the brokerage. I joined the Redwood Logistics team in 2019 when Strive Logistics was acquired. And really, in my current role as the EVP of strategy, I spend most of my time interfacing between our operations, our strategy, and our engineering teams, working on how we advance our strategic and technology initiatives with an emphasis and focus on growing our digital freight brokerage. So we'll cover the following topics today, starting with a look at the fragmentation that exists in the supply chain across both freight and technology. Then we'll move on to some of the lessons we learned from 2020, and specifically how the year accelerated the need and demand for more connected technology solutions in the supply chain. Next, I'll move on and share a market update and forecast for 2021, as well as some strategies that we're seeing both our shipper and carrier partners embrace to navigate both market and network uncertainties. And lastly, we'll talk about what is required to solve the freight technology disconnect and what are some of the new digital freight tech offerings, such as dynamic price discovery, that companies are embracing to elevate their operations. I came across a stat a few months ago that resonated with me, and I've been sharing it with some of my colleagues, and it's from Gartner. And what it said was, according to a recent poll, 68% of companies are investing in digital supply chain planning, and it's their highest priority for digital investment. So between cloud-based solutions, APIs, data science, automation, and many other technologies, they're all just starting to mature into the supply chain space. I'm extremely excited about what this next phase of transformation will look like for our industry and the opportunities that it will unlock for all of us. I think trends in remote work and technology that has connected us over the past year has only accelerated the way ideas are being shared and then operationalized. So when we talk about freight and technology fragmentation, I think it's important to take a look at how we got here. If we look at the evolution of logistics over the past 40 years, you can see a pretty clear picture of how fragmentation emerged in the transportation industry and in the supply chain industry. It started with the carrier community after deregulation in 1980. But then again, when C.H. Robinson acquired American Backhaulers around 2000. And after that acquisition, a new wave of upstart 3PLs were created, adding additional fragmentation to the 3PL space. And until this point, there were really only a handful of technology providers in the market and available to carriers, 3PLs, and shippers. Fast forward to 2010, and now new cloud-based technology and lower development costs are starting to pave the way for a proliferation of new lightweight technology solutions that are solving specific problems in the supply chain. Over the past 10 years, we've seen an explosion of new technology for our industry to the point that the solutions are starting to become the problem. There's fragmentation in the technology space for supply chain now. The next evolution of this cycle, and I believe what we'll see over the next 10 years, is connecting all of these disparate systems so that businesses can have end-to-end interoperability across their technology providers. Harmonizing both data and technology is going to take center stage as the area where organizations can unlock the most value to their business. But where are we now? So we just covered that the number of choices is growing and more abundant than ever. And this is going to continue to grow. And as the number of tech solutions grows, so too will the number of disparate systems we're all using. Compounding that issue is more custom work streams are being introduced by businesses to their operations. And so pulling the solution together is difficult. We're at an intersection of fragmentation between shippers, carriers, and technology providers, and it's a trend that will only accelerate. So we need to bridge the gap. We need to unify our planning, our technology, and our visibility and partner collaboration. The industry needs to move towards more open network planning and real-time data sharing and execution models, such as dynamic price discovery, which we'll get into shortly. The reality is variability is our new normal. Between complexity of goods, a lack of standardization, and volatility in supply and demand networks, these are all exacerbating the problems we need to solve. Variability in our industry is one of the key reasons we have yet to be disrupted. It's very hard to Uberize the supply chain industry because it's difficult to induce supply to meet demand the same way you can for passenger transportation. The intricacy of our shipping networks and their variable nature also means that the status quo of one-dimensional planning is not going to continue or will not unlock future value for the supply chain. Collaboration across shipping networks and aggregating capacity network insights is going to be critical if we are going to move past the 50% carrier utilization mark. And so moving on, consumer demands are also changing faster than ever before. E-commerce, for example, grew to $792 billion last year. It's a 100% increase from where we were in 2015. Consumers are more impatient than ever before. How many of us on the call will choose one product over another if it has same-day shipping? Further, how many won't order a product from Amazon if it doesn't include free shipping or 2-day shipping? And so today, there are 150 million members on Amazon Prime. And I think that probably answers the question. Consumers are changing their expectations. Notably, 150 million members on Prime is up 300% in just the past 4 years alone. And then finally, supply chains are becoming global. Platforms like Amazon, Alibaba, and eBay are opening up commerce across other countries. Today, with the click of a button, any of us can now order products direct from an OEM in China, in India, and many other countries across the globe. The supply chains that thrive over the next decade will employ digital strategies. They'll collaborate with more partners. They'll leverage data and analytics, and they'll build and operate flexible supply chain platforms that can respond to changes in consumption, supply and demand volatility, and other unexpected supply chain shocks like we saw last year. And so speaking to that, let's take a look at what 2020 did teach us. First, the problems of the past, they're still present. The sharp spikes we saw in volatility that disrupted supply chain networks in 2020 was unlike anything we'd ever seen before. Routing guides failed. And as we'll see in a few slides, tender rejections in the market reached levels never seen before. 2020 accelerated the need for technology. At Redwood, we're getting more interest from shippers in products like dynamic price discovery and our real-time pricing API so that they can quickly and confidently navigate the ebbs and flows in their network, as well as streamline their operations. Access to real-time data and spending insights is transforming the decades-long process of contracted capacity. Supply chain leaders are now able to rethink their supply chain strategy to control costs, to ensure routing guide compliance, and to establish a more mutually beneficial relationship with their carrier base. New innovation and technology is going to enable more flexible carrier-shipper contracts in the future. I fully expect the popularity of more frequent pricing events to grow and eventually evolve into a more dynamic rate execution environment. Contracted rates in the future will be anchored to market demand events, and they'll have dynamic adjustments up or down on the mutually agreed upon market indicators for the line haul rate. Moving in this direction will encourage more routing guide compliance during periods of volatility, and it will strengthen the relationship we have between shippers, carriers, and logistics companies. Pushing the supply chain towards a more durable network and flexible contracts will be a net positive, and ultimately, it will help us achieve our goal of moving in the direction of higher and longer term network and fleet utilization. This is a good image from Sonar. And what you can see is the dramatic shift in demand that we observed last April through May. And with that drawdown in demand, the cost per shipment dropped so dramatically that it was below the break-even point for carriers, causing many drivers to exit the industry and stop driving their trucks. If you fast forward from that point, 2 months later, as states began to reopen, we saw the steepest rise in rates in our history as the supply of trucks couldn't keep up with the demand from shippers. And really what made this situation even worse was that the structural routing guides that usually serve our industry were fractured. And so it left both shippers and carriers operating at extremely elevated levels in the spot market. This is just another view of how tendered rejections in the market reacted. And it shows exactly how dislocated carrier and shipper networks are at the present. What's unique about what has happened in this cycle and what has happened with tender rejections is how long they have remained high. The strong consumer demand in the industry, coupled with a systemic driver shortage and transportation networks that need to be reset and rebid, are a big part of this problem we see. And so overall, 2020 showed us that being disconnected is our Achilles heel. It's costing our organizations time and money. And we just saw that from the last slide. Market volatility and tender rejections have disrupted the transportation strategies that shippers have employed. And the biggest innovation in 2020 has been connecting with each other. It's been problem solving over tools like Zoom and Teams and WebEx and remote environments. Most businesses were able to quickly transition and streamline how we operate in a remote environment using technology. The next part of the cycle is connecting our systems with each other to streamline our operations. And so if we look ahead to 2021, and based on the lessons we learned in 2020, the 5 themes and the 5 goals that we're hearing from both our shipper and our carrier partners are the following. First and foremost, ROI. What technology strategies are going to deliver the biggest short and long-term ROI for their business and keep the business models competitive? Second, automation. How are workflows being optimized using technology so that employees have more time back so they can focus on relationships and higher level problem solving. Flexibility. Supply chain execution strategies need to be flexible to market impacts and for demand planning. Visibility. This is a big one, and this isn't just location visibility, but it's really data visibility. It's estimated that 73% of all data goes unused by organizations for analytics. And so capturing the data is step one, but then we have to do something, which is step two. And finally, people. Organizations that want to stay competitive will empower their employees and enable them with technology. And so let's take a look at what some of the transformation investment strategies are for 2021. And specifically, what are some of the strategies that companies are employing to improve their digital fitness? First, what the market's telling us so far this year is that high demand will likely remain through 2021. The US economy is in the midst of a V-shaped recovery. In fact, according to JP Morgan, GDP in 2021 is on a path that will raise its pre-crisis trajectory. What are some of the factors driving this? We have historically low inventories, an extremely robust consumer environment. We're seeing more regional shipping trends to keep up with the same day and next day consumer expectations. As we discussed, over 150 million members on Prime. That's almost half of the country has a Prime membership. Trends in deurbanization and remote work are also driving more consumption from big box and retail stores. And more in-home dining is taking shape as work settings adopt a more flexible work environment and work from home policies. A new poll from Wells Fargo showed that 37% of millennials plan to leave the cities they live in within the next year. And then finally, we've had trillions of dollars of government stimulus flowing right back into the economy and right back into consumption. And so strategies that we're seeing our customer and carrier partners deploy in 2021 include the following. First, all of these strategies are data-led. Companies are eager to use their own data to make better decisions and deliver better outcomes. We're also seeing more of the industry digitizing the carrier and the customer experience, whether that's through digital freight brokerage technology, visibility tools, or other methods. Driving system connectedness within and across organizations will be paramount to the future success of the supply chain. Imagine a world where all of our systems had the same interoperability as the Microsoft product suite. Business leaders are making significant investments in the digital maturity of their core operating systems, and they're modernizing their technology stack for future success. And finally, organizations have long known about the benefits of advancing their analytic capabilities. But to date, I put the industry somewhere between the descriptive and the predictive bullets you see on your screen. Companies in the supply chain first need to harness their own data to unlock value. But exponential value across the supply chain will only happen when we reach the predictive and the prescriptive analytics stage, which can then provide recommendations based on data across not just an organization's data, but across multiple networks and not just siloed to one company. Unlocking that value will provide the most significant lift in network, operational, and driver utilization that we've ever seen. I think a great example and validation of how companies are starting to gain access to their data is the meteoric rise of Snowflake. And so businesses are starting to lean in to how powerful their data can be, not only to account for what has happened, but to guide and to better forecast what will happen. So how do we solve the freight tech disconnect? This is a good representation of what connectivity looks like in the supply chain today. Solving this challenge in a highly fragmented industry produces solutions that are as fragmented as the market itself. And so what the industry really needs is a binding agent, an integration layer to bring all of these disparate solutions together with technical prowess, vertical expertise, and process excellence. Some of the major areas these new solutions are coming in to solve include manual processes, solving the problem of limited visibility and communication, static and fixed pricing, and flexible capacity. And so Redwood is actively investing in solving this problem, not just for ourselves, but for all members of the supply chain. We're investing in building an ecosystem that can seamlessly leverage the power of our connected networks. This slide helps illustrate the one-to-many integration layer we're building for the supply chain community so that businesses and organizations can quickly integrate and connect to thousands of additional trading partners. Our Redwood Connect integration framework allows tech teams to repurpose the integration work that they're investing in. We've already partnered and integrated with some of the largest tier 1 TMS providers in the country, such as Yonder and the dynamic price discovery product we're here to talk about today. We're also connecting warehouse management systems, order management systems, ERP systems, Gartner-rated tracking platforms, and more. And so really the vision is to facilitate connectivity to all systems within the supply chain and beyond, and then enable value creation for all parties by leveraging data and process automation across the entire ecosystem. Some of the areas within our own brokerage that we're leveraging Connect include instant quoting and booking within our digital freight brokerage, automating freight workflows, dynamic procurement and pricing execution, and freight matching, all of which save our carriers and our shippers and deliver more time and value back to both. So we covered some of the Redwood approach, but let's use the next few slides to go a little deeper. This is one of my favorite top-down total addressable market forecasts for our industry. And I think one of the things that stands out is if you look at where we are in 2021, the digital freight brokerage industry is expected to generate roughly $14 billion in revenue. Fast forward 7 years, only 7 years, and the digital freight brokerage industry is expected to be $89 billion. That's tremendous growth across the segment, and it really represents the validation and the role that technology will play in executing transportation strategies. The Redwood approach to building the bridge between logistics and technology rests really on our core 3 strengths. First, we're an open provider to the market, and the technology we build will be based on an open platform. Second, we have a very unique perspective and logistics experience. We're experts across the board between all modes, services, and physical and digital network design. And we also practice what we preach. We're customers of our own product. And so we're the only supply chain company, not only with the logistics side, but also with a very large consulting side as well. And finally, on our open platform, we're delivering optionality. Subscribers can either leverage our platform or only use our systems that are leveraging the platform. In either case, we'll deliver the right custom tailored solution for them. A few of the examples of digital solutions powered by the Redwood Connect and LPass platform include dynamic price discovery. We have connected with Yonder to deliver real-time and instant rates directly embedded within the TMS that Yonder shippers are using to plan and execute their transportation strategy. Our API connectivity is delivering value to Yonder customers through both tracking and rating visibility. Providing real-time rates and guaranteed capacity used to only exist for the LTL industry. And over the next few years, it's going to become the status quo. Clients that are operating mature TMS platforms for planning will be the first to realize all of the benefits from this new solution. Yonder is one of those tier one tech-forward TMS platforms in the market. And we were really excited and proud to partner with them to deliver this dynamic price discovery solution within their technology. Finally, dynamic routing and pricing. We're using matching, pricing, and ranking algorithms to operationalize our own private network and visibility to over 100,000 trucks in our private marketplace. And this better serves our customers through scale and through our own carrier insights instead of more commoditized marketplace capacity. Finally, capacity as a service is a newer concept that will let us repurpose and commercialize our digital freight brokerage as a service to shippers. Platform connectivity. So I feel like we've covered this in some detail, but platform connectivity powered by Redwood Connect is the binding agent to bring technology disparity and network disparity together. The illustration on this slide, it's a good view of this concept, but I think a better view would be as if this was more three-dimensionally. Essentially, what we're building is a platform that powers a network of networks. And we want to promote this solution to our carriers, our customers, our partners, and even our competitors. A neutral, one-to-many framework that will power the industry forward and unlock tremendous potential and value for all parties. API connectivity. We believe in plug-and-play access to the largest tracking providers in the market, and we're connected to all of the top-tier providers. In fact, just recently, we struck a partnership with Project 44, the highest rated Gartner tracking provider in the market, to be part of our Redwood Connect and our logistics platform as a service product. Rating, which we've discussed already, and dynamic price discovery, which streamlines the operational process for our shipper partners and also for Redwood. And capacity. Our goal is to continue to build a private marketplace of capacity that we can then offer to our shippers. When shippers are selecting a digital freight brokerage, it's important to understand their capacity strategy and their scale. Digital freight brokerage can mean a lot of different things. And so it is important for shippers to fully understand how capacity is found and how it's utilized. Subscribing to public marketplaces of capacity that anyone can access and are commoditized is not a competitive advantage for digital freight brokerage. And so this is one of my favorite slides, but this is really how many of our shippers are currently using the dynamic price discovery product to benefit their organization. First, they're using it to quickly and easily compare rates. The dynamic price discovery solution within Blue Yonder receives a market rate for shipments in under 1 second. And so transportation planners on the Blue Yonder TMS can quickly and confidently see what the market rate is compared to their contracted rate. In addition, and especially over the past 6 months, many of our shippers have been using this dynamic price discovery product as a way to access more flexible capacity, to navigate some of the demand planning that they've had to because of high tender rejections. And so this enables shippers to quickly execute their shipments in near real time. Finally, it's also allowing shippers to avoid paying premiums and to benchmark their rates versus the market. This is going to play a large role, I feel, when the market does begin to stabilize. Over the past 12 months, we've had an unprecedented amount of recontracting, and it seems like contract rates today are nearing all-time highs. The market will stabilize at some point. And so shippers who adopt this tool will have insight into where their contracted rates fall relative to where the market is. And this can be used in renegotiations, in understanding what the delta is between the market rate and the contracted rate so that they have some leverage at the negotiation table. And finally, maybe one of the most powerful ways dynamic price discovery benefits not just shippers, but companies like Redwood as well, is that it allows us to streamline operations. We can get rid of the emails and the phone calls for price discovery, and we connect our systems. And so visibility and price discovery, it's embedded directly into the technology platform that you or your transportation team is using today. This is just a high-level view of what the process looks like, but it really, in its simplest form, consists of 3 primary steps. First, the TMS automatically sends the shipment details to the Redwood API server during the transportation planning process. In under 1 second, we return a bookable rate back to the Blue Yonder TMS. And that rate gets embedded within your routing guide in your shipment details. And so the next screen has a better view of what that price discovery process looks like within the Blue Yonder TMS. But it's a very quick and efficient way to compare rates, dynamically receive new quotes, and also just streamline the price discovery workflow that some of your team may be using today. So how does Redwood compare to some of the other digital players in the industry? Well, one of the big ways we stand out and separate ourselves is we have over 20 years of experience. Redwood has been around for nearly 2 decades, and many of the new digital freight brokerages are just starting to mature into the industry. In addition, we have a digital freight brokerage and matching platform that's powering a top 15 brokerage in North America. The scale we have achieved has been through organic customer growth and not through a subsidized market share capture strategy. We also have a very large managed freight services division. So we have perspective as a shipper and from a managed service perspective. We have a private network of over 20,000 carriers in our digital freight brokerage. And we also believe in dedicated account support and operations support. Finally, Redwood will deliver quotes in any market condition. Our scale and the size of our workforce means that we won't turn off our rating API solution if the market faces extreme peaks in demand. So I won't run through all of these case studies, but at the highest level, these are just a few examples of really material savings that our customers have received that have leveraged either our Connect platform, our rating API and dynamic price discovery platform, and some of the value they're receiving. Our teams are transforming supply chains across all verticals, and each solution we deliver is unique to the shipper we're working with. And it's delivered by both logistics engineers and integrators. Most of our clients are using a combination of traditional and digital services with Redwood, and all of them are leveraging Connect. And so before I get into some of the questions that have come in summary, what we've discussed is organizations have been frustrated with some of their transformation investments and the associated ROI. Freight technology solutions today have failed to deliver an easy button. Today's technology models are complex and they're expensive to support. And connectivity is the problem and also the solution. Finally, Redwood's open platform approach is delivering optionality, profitability, and control. And a great example of that is the dynamic price discovery product that we've partnered with Yonder at delivering for their clients. Meeting our clients where they operate today is the goal for the industry. And so with that, we have some time. I will go into some questions. All right. First one. How are most shippers currently benchmarking their transportation spend? That's a good question. So I would say most shippers today are subscribing to more market-based indexes that use historical data as the primary method for benchmarking transportation spend. What's missing is a more real-time view of what the market is doing now and where is the market going. And that's one of the key benefits and really the key value points of the dynamic price discovery process is it allows you to, in real time, see a snapshot of what the market's doing compared to what your contracted rates are doing. It also allows you to have meaningful and purposeful conversations with your carriers if there is a delta between your contracted rate and where the market is. What are your thoughts on improving the RFP process? So we talked about this a little in the presentation. I really believe the industry is moving towards a more dynamic contracting process. I think the dynamic price discovery solution through Yonder, it's really one element of what needs to be an overhaul on how we contract with all parties in the supply chain. And so, again, as I discussed on an earlier slide, I think we're going to have more market demand driven signals or factors that tie back into the contracted pricing and lever it up or down, similar to how a fuel surcharge program works in insulating or hedging the risk for both carriers and shippers or logistics providers. Will this lead to a more dynamic pricing model in the future? I absolutely think, obviously the topic is dynamic price discovery. I'm on calls with Fortune 500 shippers weekly, and everybody I speak with is interested in not only dynamic pricing models, but digital pricing models, and connecting information seamlessly into the solutions and the TMS systems they're using. So I absolutely think more dynamic pricing models will take shape. It will be an evolution. And likely what will happen is many of the bid boards that big shippers are also using to solicit rates, they'll operate in parallel to these rating API solutions until we reach critical mass, because the maturity of these technology solutions is still in the early innings. We're evolving, but Redwood is one of maybe 10 or 15 solution providers in the market offering real-time digital rates. That number needs to grow before the entire industry can transition. But I absolutely think it will happen, and it will also power much of that digital freight brokerage growth we talked about earlier in the slides. I'll skip down. How does this work with a TMS like Manhattan, Carrier Point, OTM, et cetera? That's a really good question. So Redwood currently has partnerships with 5 of the major tier 1 TMS providers in the market. We're going to continue to grow that network and that partnership network to deliver this solution. But each TMS is different, and the optionality within Blue Yonder is going to be different than Manhattan and different than OTM. So it really depends on the platform you're using and the configuration options that have been set up. I will say that many of the TMS platforms we've recently signed on with, they've recently built this architecture within their technology to support it. So it's still new, it's in the early innings, but the tech forward shippers are leaning into this and really taking part in the early adoption of using this technology. And like I said, many of them are using it in parallel to how they operate today so that they can test the waters, reduce their risk. But because integrating and because taking advantage of solutions like dynamic price discovery are zero cost, there's very little risk. And so the shippers we work with on the Blue Yonder platform today, they don't have an integration cost. It does not require an upfront contract or cost to set up this service. Because of our integration, it really is a quick turnaround on us getting shippers set up and going live. Will this lead to full truckload pricing that's much more like LTL pricing? I don't know if we'll ever see full truckload pricing resemble LTL pricing because of how fragmented the industry is. But I do believe that truckload carriers and more 3PLs and logistics companies will invest or partner with technology providers that can distribute real-time information. Again, imagine a world when carriers, logistics companies, and shippers can all trade rates in real time, and the technology benefit of that type of price discovery. So again, I don't think we'll reach a state in the market where truckload pricing is like LTL, but I do think more dynamic and flexible truckload pricing models will be born, and they'll be tied to market-based events that dynamically adjust the base rate up or down, based on how they're set up. And that's what I think we need to move towards in order to reduce tender rejections, because we have had 20 years of different cycles where the rate fluctuations tend to change every 3 to 4 years. And that's what I think will start to pull some of that variability down and just really drive better network utilization as well. What APIs are shippers currently using for real-time freight market conditions? This is a really good question because I think it ties also back to how these real-time products for dynamic price discovery come up with their rate. So we definitely have market indices. At Redwood, we have over $1 billion in our own historical data. So we're using that data and leaning on that to drive a lot of the rate discovery that we do. There's also new products that are out there. Sonar is a great one, and some of the products they're working on that give you not just rate insights, but market dynamic insights. And so the way these products evolve and can start to take advantage of some of those market signals in order to adjust rates or up and down, that's the exciting part of our space. I opened the call with saying, we're in the first innings of a tech revolution and a data revolution in our industry. And so I think there's more tools and more data that shippers can leverage and logistics companies can leverage and carriers can leverage for a better view of what real-time freight market conditions look like. All right, looks like I answered most of the questions that have come in. I want to thank everybody for attending today. I appreciate the discussion, and if you have any follow-up questions, please reach out to Redwood or myself. You can find me on LinkedIn, and would happy to continue the conversation. Thank you, everyone, for joining.